If I can get everyone's attention, I want to honor everyone's time by starting as close to on time as we can. So we have some interpreters here that are going to make some announcements.
Good evening. I will make an announcement in Spanish. I'm a Spanish interpreter. Buenas noches. Soy intérprete en español. Los intérpretes están aquí atrás, a la izquierda, con auriculares. Si necesitan servicio de interpretación, aquí vamos a estar atrás. Recoja su auricular. Gracias.
Okay, and same for our sign language interpreters. We have a sign language interpreter here. If you need those services, they're seating up close. Anyone is welcome to move. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm looking for a student. Students? It's a late night. We're anticipating a late night. Okay. We'll go ahead and ask Ms. Foster to lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So our meeting is going to start with call to the audience. And because this is a special meeting, we've allotted 20 minutes. And currently I only have 2 cards. So if anyone else is interested in speaking, please do. I'm going to go ahead and read some information on the back. And I do want to thank you all for coming and participating. This is a really exciting night for TUSD and the community. And thank you so much for your participation, not just tonight, but through this entire process. So public participation at board meetings. Members of the public may speak during the call to the audience portion of the agenda. I'll be responsible for recognizing speakers and for maintaining proper order by setting such limitations as may be appropriate. Any person desiring to speak shall complete a call to the audience card. When addressing the board, an individual shall state his or her full name and address before going on into the subject matter. Individuals are encouraged to be brief with a maximum time limit of 3 minutes. Individuals attending the meeting and are speaking before the board shall observe rules of propriety, decorum, and good conduct and refrain from impertinent or slanderous remarks. These rules, at the conclusion of the call to the audience, I'll ask if any individual board members wish to respond to a criticism made by those who've addressed the board, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. My first speaker is Jen Darland, followed by Lillian Fox. And again, these are the only 2 cards I have, so if anyone else would like to speak to the board, I encourage you to do so.
President Grijalva, board members, and Dr. Sanchez, my name is Jen Darland. I am a parent of 2 children who attend an elementary school in TUSD. I have been a parent of this district for 5 years, going on 6 years, where my son will be in the 5th grade. I came to and attended the community strategic planning session, the all-day session, and every subsequent weekend meeting of the subcommittees. And I have to tell you that from my perspective as a community member, it was an encouraging first step in what I hope will be many earnest and authentic conversations that you engage in and seek to engage the community in. I can tell you I am a vice president of a nonprofit organization that advocates on behalf of public schools in Arizona. And those districts that have been able to weather the storm in light of significant cuts to public education have done a very good job of bringing their community into this conversation, inviting people to sit down at the table. They have discovered that when you take the time to break bread with your community, you break down those barriers that are standing in front of your students. And so I would encourage you going forward that this process may not be to the perfection of everybody at the table, but please always be striving toward that end. Please always keep that in mind. My children depend upon it. People here who invested their time, who came that initial day and those subsequent Saturdays, they're counting on this. The city of Tucson's counting on this. And boy, howdy, I sure hope that we can lead the way and tell the people up at the statewide level that TUSD is absolutely a place where we are confident to send our children to be educated and prepared for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lillian Fox. Again, anyone else who wishes to fill out a card, please do so.
I have some suggestions. I think the special master would say that the strategic plan is oriented towards measuring process as opposed to goals. And I think a lot of the process is worthy and it's intended to achieve some goals, but I think we need to specifically state some additional goals. One of the goals is improve student performance, that that needs to be a specific objective of this strategic plan. We shouldn't just have a collection of things we're measuring that are supposed to do that. It ought to be a specific goal. We have a whole bunch about curriculum here, and when the curriculum consultant spoke, it wasn't apparent to me that he was aware of the Arizona state standards. Arizona has extensive standards for curriculum for every single grade level, every single subject. And there's an elaborate curriculum plan here, but there's no mention of the state standards at all. And we shouldn't be starting from scratch. We need to start from the state standards. As a teacher, I was always required to explain how my lesson plan met state standards and which specific one. Also, I think another goal we need to have in here is to improve our enrollment in the district, because over 30% of the kids who live in the district don't attend the district. They go to other school districts because all the other school districts except TUSD outperform us. And I think that should be part of the strategic plan, that we are going to do some stuff to make this district more desirable so that parents come back to us, that kids come back to us. And that should be a measurable goal, a measurable objective in this plan. Also, I think we need to have something about reducing teacher turnover, because we have a horrific teacher turnover. And as I read the elaborate curriculum plans in here, I think that's unfortunately going to increase our turnover. The teachers tend not to like a lot of things that kind of smack of bureaucracy. And so, particularly if you're not even going to start with state standards, if you're going to start from scratch and reinvent everything, I think that could be a problem. Thank you very much. Oh, one more thing. In the communications, nothing was mentioned about the magnet schools. And publicizing our magnet schools ought to be a major part of our curriculum plan, of our communication plans, but there's nothing in there about that. There's also nothing in there about the internal auditor, and that was one of the major recommendations of the efficiency consultant. He said this district, it's unusual for a district this size not to have any internal audit function at all. He listed that as a very important recommendation. That needs to be there too. Thanks.
Thank you. Sylvia Campoy. And then after Ms. Campoy, Francis Pinellas.
Good evening, board members. Over the course of the last year, the administration and the board has repeatedly stated that it is a primary goal of yours to get out of the desegregation court order, with the primary goal being for you to gain local control. None of the verbiage, however, coming from the Diaz on the topic of one which addresses TUSD's vestiges of discrimination and how to root those vestiges out. Attacks are flung every which way, except in the direction of the guilty party, TUSD. It is of great disappointment to see that the 5-year strategic plan does not more boldly address your desegregation obligations as provided in the unitary status plan, a plan that the board approved and a plan which was stipulated by all of the parties, including TUSD. Your ongoing agitation with the desegregation plan is not one that will go away simply based on your resistance to it. It's exactly the opposite. The longer you continue to demonstrate lack of good faith, the longer you will remain under the federal court order, exactly against what you want to accomplish. The curriculum audit of April 2014 referenced the district's need to implement the USP several times. Thus, it is not only the plaintiffs, the special master, the court, and many, many community people that have pointed this out to you. It is your own commissioned audit. The class plaintiffs have been quoted many times in saying that our greatest hope for TUSD is that you fully comply with the USP so that it may, in fact, show that it has uprooted the vestiges of discrimination and that you will once and for all be declared unitary. That is our wish. That is our hope. That is what the litigation is all about, getting to that end. This will not and cannot happen with the MO of the district in one of denial and blame in every direction without any ownership in dealing with this case. and taking responsibility for the vestiges of discrimination. It does not serve you as the institution, and certainly it does not serve the students, which should be your primary goal. Thank you.
Francis Benales, followed by Adam Martinez.
Governing Board President, board members, Dr. Sanchez, lead counsel. As a current TA president, I really want to acknowledge that this is a first step, a great first step towards really building that structure that TUSD needs to plant its vision and to set the processes to reach goals, including the community, including employee groups, was really an important first step in this. However, there are some things that we really want to be able to share and talk about that still need to go into the plan. And maybe just you can explain to the employees as well as the community, where do those other things fit? And so I think it's just really important that this isn't an everything plan, it's a foundation, and there are other processes and other continued programs that we'll have to be working on that will feed into this plan. We took another first step yesterday in negotiations and in setting the tone for how we're going to be working together and what the priorities of the district are, and I think your community would like to hear about those. So thank you for this first step. Thank you for the magnet meetings that you did, and let's continue to work together so that we can build this district to be the premier district that it once was, that it should be now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Adam Martinez, and then that is my last card, in case anyone else wishes to speak. Sir.
How are you doing? Originally I was originally sent by 52 other individuals who participated in their own subcommittee, 7 of which were 200 members of your own committee, to develop a separate district using Title 15, Section 458 of the Arizona Constitution, dividing TUSD into multiple districts. But as going through this process, I realized the majority of them are bitter and vengeful from their time with TUSD. Years of reprisals. I mean, these people are your subordinates, your superiors formerly. These people work with you. I mean, how? Even at the U of A, they work with you, sir. And they are upset on not only their treatment, but the treatment of TUSD in the schools, and they see a lack of vision. One of the major things I do criticize currently with the curriculum is when it comes to your high school graduate levels, why is it that your senior classes have not been discussed and to gain accredited to the first semester of college and or Pima Community College, as in writing 101? So your senior year of high school would be writing 101, and so on and so forth. So hypothetically, every graduate leaving TUSD would then have their first semester done. Okay? Has anyone ever thought about establishing more work credit programs, not only to put some money in the pocket of our students, because we do live in the 6th poorest city in the nation with the 2nd worst stratification between the rich and poor. If we do not address those issues of poverty, and I mean, literally, you cannot bus kids from the south and west side and stick them in schools to the other side just because they're performing better and expect desegregation to work. Okay, it's not gonna happen. You have to change the entire system. Ideally, your magnet systems, like she was discussing earlier, should work, I believe, let me see, I believe Carrillo is a bilingual magnet communication school? No.
Communications.
Communication. Well, hypothetically, they would go from there to a middle school to ideally to Pueblo, which is a communication and tech school. But considering it's on its verge of losing its magnet status, you think you'd want to make it more attractive, because originally the way it was explained to me that the magnet program worked, it was to attract students to schools that were not necessarily attractive or to their area, or so on and so forth. But considering Pueblo is a communication school and has the only radio station in town, you do, frequently, you've had lawsuits with the tribes, you've had battles be over, mascots and so on and so forth. Why not discuss with the tribe different ways in which they have different acts that go to the Ava Amphitheater, the Diamond. I want you to see if your students can actually interview some of those with permission from the performer and the companies and the casinos, to allow the students to actually have interviews. You think that wouldn't be attractive for students on the other part of the zone? Oh, I get to interview this person today, I get to interview this person today, but I don't mind taking that 30-minute bus ride from the other side of town to my school because I get to actually go to a class where I actually get to enjoy. Why don't let them interview yourselves? Do interviews with them?
Thank you. One more card. Okay. Margaret Chavez. I'm sorry. Cheney. Come on. I'm sorry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board, Dr. Sanchez. I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank all those parties who truly believe in desegregation and the true education of all children in this district. It has been and will continue to be a struggle of trial and error. However, I would also like to take this time to ask everyone to reflect on their commitment to the struggle. There have been many losses of experienced faculty and staff, and our reputation as a district has took a hit over the past 3 years. But I would like to stay focused and positive wherever possible. Some of my focus wavered last week when I began to question whether or not everyone has total buy-in into the direction the rest of us are attempting to go. I would like to point out a quote from Dr. Stegeman that did not appear to upset anyone, except me at the time, but it was late, and so perhaps you were only half listening. Regarding concerns from Ms. Foster about the shallow references to culture and the pillar system, he said, "From what I know, things like food, dance, costumes, mythology have very deep cultural roots. Sure, some goes back hundreds of years. It's hard to me to imagine references to culture that would call these shallow references to culture in any way. It seems to me these things are very important and in many cases almost define culture. I can't see how that understanding could have changed that much. My students, my coworkers, and I are much more than food, music, dance, and costumes. That mythology you refer to is religion to me. Those costumes you find so colorful are my clothing. It is interesting that you left out language, as so much can be misinterpreted between tongues. My culture consists of historic contributions in science, business, engineering, and medicine. My people are my family, and my family is all around me. We accept and respect those around me, regardless of our perceived differences. We have taken the time to inquire about what we don't understand and respect what is sacred to others. We wish you would learn to do the same. Your statement was prefaced by the words, "I'm not an expert in culturally relevant instruction." I have a question. Why not? You are on the faculty of a major university. There must be culture on that campus. Do you recognize it? Do you respect it? Do you honor its presence? If the answer to any of these questions is no, then I ask you respectfully to take the training in cultural relevant pedagogy or to step down, as you are not a committed board member, and we need to effect real change in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other cards? Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? We have a few more minutes. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the call to the audience and ask if any board member wishes to respond to a criticism, wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. Dr. Stegeman and Ms. Foster.
Yeah, I'll respond briefly to the last speaker. I appreciate those remarks. I stand by everything I said, but I agree that language is absolutely a fundamental, there's no more fundamental part of culture that defines culture, that reflects the evolution of culture. That's absolutely true, and there was nothing meant by omitting that at all. Language is one of the most fundamental manifestations of culture.
Ms. Foster.
And I would just like to point out, one of the speakers mentioned that the strategic plan was not based on state standards. And I know we'll discuss this evening, but the very first page that we're talking about it's aligned to state standards, knowledge, and skills. And so I just want to preface that was not a fair statement, because everything I know we do in TUSD is definitely based on the Arizona state standards.
Thank you. Our next item is our action item number 1, Tucson Unified School District Strategic Plan. Dr. Sanchez.
Well, what was very encouraging is today was our new teacher induction at McCorkle. And so I went ahead as I was introducing the team and invited the new teachers. I said, you know what, if at 6 o'clock you're not doing anything, and or if you need a break from setting up your room, we're rolling out the strategic plan tonight, and it'll, if approved, set the direction for the next 5 years. And it'll be a roadmap that you can consult and look at to know what comes next. And so as people began gathering around 5 o'clock, Mr. Foster, Richard Foster, our Senior Director for Professional Development, he pointed out some of the new teachers that were at McCorkle today that did come tonight. So I'd like to definitely recognize all teachers and all educators and our new teachers with a round of applause for coming tonight. What's very encouraging is, you know, I was hoping we would fill the room, and I think the first reason we filled the room is, as I was coming in, Michelle was taking pictures of the snacks that food service catering had provided and how delicious and colorful they were, and she began putting them on, I believe, Facebook and sending them out. So I think that's what drew the crowd in. So I'd like to recognize Shirley Soko, and I'd like to recognize the food service department for the work they did in preparing the snacks that were just very, very elegant and very decorative and very tasty on the outside. So we could recognize them, please. So, TUSD 5-year strategic plan. You know, when I came in, that was one of the key points. One of the key questions I remember the board asked, you asked. You said, HT, what are you going to do to change the image of TUSD? And it's a really great question because it's simple, but it's deep. And the answer is complex. My answer was, I'm not going to do anything because by myself I can't do anything. But with our principals, with our teachers, with our students, with our business leaders, with our elected officials, with our parents, with our community, there's nothing that we can't do. And all those things that we haven't been able to address individually, we can address collectively. And the strength comes from many people coming together with many different and novel ideas to long-standing solutions. So for me to come in and to proclaim that I had the answers, that by myself I knew the way, would have been foolish. But to come in and acknowledge my limitation, that I'm coming in new, but to also acknowledge the tremendous strength of all the people that are within this community, generations who have lived here all their lives, families who have reared generations of children here, and to ask, maybe some for the first time, what do you think about this? It's very simple, like that question, how do you change the image of TUSD? Very simple question, what do you think? And so, in February of this year, we asked that question, what do you think? And over 200 community members shared their thoughts. So, I'd like to show a video of how this all began.
Tucson and TUSD are so tied that we really, for the benefit of the entire city, we need to ensure that TUSD is successful. So thank you so much for being here.
This day is about you. This day is about what your thoughts are, what your direction is. We needed to have a conversation on communication, finance, facilities, curriculum and instruction, and diversity. So each committee is going to say, here are the values, these are the strategic priorities that are tied to those values for this community, and these are the SMART goals for year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that get us to the epitome of where we want to be with our 5-year strategic plan in those 5 key areas.
They had a pretty sophisticated study done by economists, not educators. The economists concluded that the payoff is about $1.50 for every dollar that's invested.
Take a look at our ELL students, our English language learners. Those students are performing 1/3 as well as white students. So even in Tucson, where we're doing better in some places, we still have some huge challenges to face.
The biggest one for us, equity. Equity is always at the core and the center of every decision that we make and every piece that goes into our school and our students.
As a Native American, it's really nice to have a recognition and the ability to be heard.
Education needs to be a top priority, and we need to have high expectations for our students, and this is a place to start.
And one of the most important things with me is the issue of diversity, helping kids have a good experience, getting teachers prepared to teach diversity.
It's a great day. This is a fabulous start. Love the bringing together of the whole community and was honored to be a part of it.
The superintendent's desire to take the opinions of the community into account, that's, I think, a bold, progressive, and an architect of a new plan for TUSD. Being able to talk about the classroom of the future, being able to talk about the demographic shift, not just in Tucson, but in America, I think is a thought-provoking conversation for the district to be on its way to being one of the top districts in America.
So we invited in over 200 community members for February 25th. And as these community members were getting together and talking about where they saw gaps and holes and ideas on how to fill them, the district was moving forward with a curriculum audit and was moving forward with a efficiency audit. And so as we were talking about the dreams of where we want to go and the gaps that we felt we saw, the curriculum audit was pointing out some historical information and was pointing out where we had these challenges that we hadn't been so bold in the past to face. The same thing on the efficiency side. You know, the things that ran loud and clear in my mind when the curriculum audit was rolled out was, number one, we didn't have a curriculum. The other thing that rang out loud and clear is if we continue to proceed without a curriculum, we'd never close those achievement gaps. So the audit was an indictment of continuing past practice and not changing to a better future practice. The audit was a critique of us not being focused on the main thing, which is teaching and learning. So what I'm going to talk about first is the curriculum aspect of the strategic plan, because in the business of education, curriculum is foundational. When you take a look at strategic priority 1, the key terminology with strategic priority 1 is design an aligned, articulated, and well-administered curriculum. Aligned, of course, to the Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards. Everything we do in Arizona is aligned to that. Understanding that at one point in time, the state referred to its standards as the Arizona standards and then again as the Common Core. We wanted to ensure the timelessness of the statement, and so the specific label of the state's curriculum, if you will, was forgone for the sake of ensuring the timelessness of the statement. So it reads, TUSD will design an aligned, articulated, and well-administrative curriculum. Of course, the aligned is to the state curriculum, so I want to be very clear in that. As you look at the other aspects of the statement, you see that it's about college and career readiness, because we want to acknowledge that we want to push our kids to college, but we also want to acknowledge the honor in work through skilled trades and certification. And so the first one is about a curriculum. Because if you'll remember, Dr. Poston in the curriculum audit presentation said you have to have a written curriculum. That's where you begin. Strategic priority 2 is about challenging and engaging instruction. Now, the challenging and engaging is we want to be sure that it's a high level and that it really engages the kid's interest. And so, as Dr. Poston presented, you have to have not just the written curriculum, but the taught curriculum. So, the challenging and engaging instruction component speaks to the taught curriculum. The next component talks about professional development. If you have strong curriculum and you have good delivery, how do you tie that together? How do you share the great ideas from one side to another through strong, good, and meaningful professional development? Not done by outside consultants. We're actually working with the Arizona Department of Education. They've come in and they've provided professional development, a basis for us from which to begin in math and reading over the last couple of weeks. So we're strengthening our partnership with the state agency. They've actually come in and they have the alignment to the state curriculum because they are the warehouse for such. And they've provided training to our staff to begin rolling out a trainer-trainers model in the area of understanding Arizona college and career readiness standards. So professional development is key. The fourth area is data. As you can see, it says we'll use a range of student and classroom data routinely to check for the understanding of students. So if we have a written curriculum that's based on the state standard, we have professional development that rolls it out, we have challenging and engaging instruction, the way to know if it's really working and taking hold in the minds of students is through meaningful assessments, but not just pencil paper tests, because we all know life isn't just about pencil paper tests. Life is about, can you execute tasks? Can you show that you understand it beyond A, B, C, and D? Life isn't an A, B, C, D multiple choice test. We all acknowledge that. So when we're taking a look at the authentic nature, it's assessing students through what they can also do, produce, perform, speak to, create. We have very talented students, so we want to assess them beyond just a pencil paper test on a given day over a given set of questions. The next piece, item 5, is common and ongoing assessments. I've mentioned that we have between, on certain sites, 40% to 60% on the high end of a mobility rate, where students are at one site for 6 weeks, another site for another 6 weeks. So an aligned curriculum with high quality professional development, the use of student data to see what they're learning, authentic assessment to honor students that have different learning styles. Common assessments will help us identify if, as a district, we're teaching the concepts that the students will be accountable for, moving to the next grade, ultimately out to 12th grade and then out into the world. And so these aligned assessments have to be aligned to the district curriculum, which is aligned to the professional development, which is aligned to the state assessments, and is aligned to the state curriculum, and ultimately college and career readiness. So the entirety of curriculum, that area, is intently tied to really creating within TUSD the largest, or filling the gap to the largest critique of the curriculum audit. That the curriculum was random, that it was spurious, that on certain sites they did it one way, on another site they did it another way. Some sites had material, some sites didn't, some sites used technology, others didn't. So this is the basis, this is the beginning. So now, with this plan approved by the board, we will have a written curriculum, we will have a taught curriculum, we'll have an assessed curriculum and professional development to hold it together, and data and assessment, an authentic assessment with that to gauge student understanding. This was designed by multiple people when we got to the community forums where we met on Saturdays at Duffy, and we spent 4 Saturdays really working through the subcommittee aspect of this work. And so I do appreciate, Ms. Campoy being present in the curriculum aspect and providing her input there. And so some of that you'll see within the greater detail as we move forward, as well as others, educators and teachers. And we had very energized teachers who were there talking about what they would like to see across the district. When you take a look at diversity as the next one, diversity speaks to, on item 1, a reflective curriculum. So it's curricular instruction and professional development that integrates diversity and high expectations for all students. So what we're looking at, this does tie specifically to the unitary status plan and the goals of the district for children, for students, to see themselves in the curricula, to see themselves in their culture and their own traditions integrated into what they learn and what they read. The second item speaks to recruit, hire, train, and work to retain teachers and administrators and staff who reflect the student population. That was a big piece. That was a big piece of the conversation, because I think in the district's history, we've talked about, yeah, we do some of that. We want to do that. We want to go out. Yeah, we'll do more of that. We'll bring in more diversity. But it's in writing here. If the board approves it, it's in writing here as a measurable goal that we'll identify sites, we'll identify campuses that don't meet a higher level of diversity with staff, and then begin through crafting a plan to bring people in so that our classrooms reflect our community and our students. And so that was a very in-depth conversation by the people who took part in that. And on the video was Mr. Boykins, and he took part in that conversation. Item 3 is world language options. You know, we want to start with the after-school program, but we'd like to see a more robust world language option where we have opportunities for Mandarin. Oh, sorry. I need somebody else probably to work this. So let me go through. So when we take a look at diversity, and we're talking about world language options, you'll see that as strategic priority 3. The world language options really is speaking to foreign languages, and we already have some Mandarin, we already have some Korean, we have some French, some German, but this is really about making that a more, this is really making it about more of a robust program. When you take a look at strategic priority 4, under diversity, advanced learning opportunities. I think we've said for the longest time that we want more students from diverse backgrounds in advanced learning experiences. The board has taken some previous action to expand dual language as a advanced learning experience. And so what this goal sets forth, we want to measure the number of students annually that we're getting in to IB, AP, dual credit, and those who are taking the AP exams. And so this really puts that at the forefront of the work. You can see that there, and we want to use AVID as a vehicle for that, which is also something that we've worked through with some of our DSEG work. Strategic priority 5 on community engagement. This one is really speaking to us working with the community as a resource. And so in each of these others, when you take a look at 1, 2, 3, and 4, we have a certain capacity within the district. But this 5th one is about reaching out to the general public, where there is a stronger capacity for helping us move forward in integrating more culturally representative curricula in recruitment and hiring in foreign languages, as well as in encouraging students to take on advanced learning opportunities. So strategic priority 5 is not engaging the community to teach them, but asking them to come in and help us in moving strategic priorities 1 through 4 of the diversity aspect forward. Okay, let's fast forward to facilities. On the facility side, we're in Tucson, Arizona, and Tucson, Arizona is about green planning. And so strategic priority 1 is that the district will take a look at green planning as we do building updates, or any type of construction that we look at renewable sources of energy. I think the district has already begun down the road with the solar project, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're also looking at our ecology program and how can we really look at renewable resources. In conversation, we're looking at the gardens on the roof of Tucson High School. I mean, there's a whole lot in green planning that we're considering as we move forward. So this is a goal. This is a community goal, very reflective of the community's will. Strategic priority 2 under facilities is about communicated clear vision for facilities. This is really about a long-range master plan. And so this is about the right school, the right size, and the right place with the right program. And it's not about where things exist today, but really working with the boundary review group that's already done some of the groundwork on this end, and taking a look at the recommendations they're putting forward, and then seeing what we could roll out, understanding that anything we do on the facility side costs money. It would be a long-range plan, but the big piece, as you can see under the item 2, strategic priority 2, is about coming up with that long-range plan, the right school, the right size, and the right place with the right program. When you take a look at 3, it's about preventative maintenance. It's about ensuring that we restructure our preventative maintenance in a way that really responds to and maintains older facilities and the newer facilities that we have, such as McCorkle and our West Side Transportation Depot, that we really take care of those facilities. They're gifts from the community, and we want to be sure we take care of them. And then gifts that are a little older, some of our other schools, that we continue to take care of those and that we have a plan to address such. You also see technology plan for specific use. This one is extremely important because it's not just about wires and switches and control panels. This one's really about moving past that to teaching and learning and technology, not as the curricula. Here's your curricula, here's the technology, but as teachers begin rolling out the curriculum, as they begin learning how to better use it and utilize it, technology then comes in as a resource. And so at this point, we want to be sure that, as Mr. Jackson, our Chief Technology Officer, refers to TUSD, the land before the iPhone, that we are moving beyond the land before the iPhone, and we have the infrastructure and background set so that when teachers are asking for one-on-one computing and when teachers are asking for students to have greater access and autonomy and using web resources that are much more dynamic than, and use that to support what they learn out of books, that the backbone and the technology will be there, and that the technology will respond to the classroom rather than us showing up, putting a laptop or an iPad on the teacher's desk and saying, all right, do something with it, and I'm going to evaluate if you don't do something good with it. So this is rather the teachers come forward and say, here are some ideas and how we'd like to see technology used. So it truly becomes a solution as opposed to an imposed solution. Item 5 is about safety and security. We want to be sure we have physically inviting and nurturing schools, and we want to also make sure that these schools protect students from physical and emotional harm. So it's not just about the buildings, it's also about some of the training and some of the work that we're going to do to ensure that we honor all of our kids and that we're able to ensure students can come to school and feel good about coming to school and not come to school or not stay home and not want to come to school for fear of what may occur. On the finance side, the first strategic priority in finance is systems and process creation and or refinement. As you can take a look at this, we've taken a big first step with ERP, which is actually the second piece. But we had to use the findings from the efficiency audit to help identify where we weren't as efficient with our processes. So we've spent time mapping out processes, and this is going to speak to ensuring that the processes we've mapped out make sense to the end user. So year 1 is really about getting out there, communicating with the end user, and making sure that these mapped out processes make sense so that when they're put into the enterprise resource planning software package, that they have the input of the end users, and that we're not taking a simple process and making it much more complicated, that we're taking a simple process and making it much more simple, much more user-friendly. You take a look at 3, which is about transparency. This one is really impressive because it's about educating all our stakeholders on financial practices, how finance is done in Arizona, and being on the forefront of that, and setting up opportunities and forums and videos to explain how budgeting is done, how average daily membership is calculated, how school enrollment, what the 40th day means, what the 100th day means, how schools are funded for a year behind, not where they are, and to really go through all those complexities of the budgeting process. And so this also speaks to workshops as we get the ERP rolled out, to where any workshop with the board is also an open meeting, but really for a more of an educational conversation on what finance means so that people understand the difference between title funds, state and federal funds, maintenance operation funds, building funds, bond funds, and all the other types of funds, and how those can be used. 4 is about legislative advocacy. You know, we've been somewhat absent at the state level, and so this is a challenging call by our community to get back engaged with the state and to really, make our presence known there in a positive way, and should the need arise, be present and available to comment on legislation that affects public education and speak to it from a well-informed first-person point of view. And it's something where we've been somewhat absent, and so this is really about building relationships with not just legislators locally, but also across the state, and being present present to address legislative issues for more of a broad-based group, and this one ties with the previous goal. So the previous strategic priority is about educating people about the way the funding and finance system works, and the second one is about the advocacy. So once you're able to educate people and say, here's how it works, people are informed and then can advocate in what they believe in, and so those two really tie together. The final one on the finance side is about external funding sources. So it's really about looking at some external funding in the sense of grants that are available through the Department of Education at the federal level, state grants, and then other charity and nonprofit grants, but also at some point in time being so bold as to go out and, as other districts have considered, taking a look at overrides and bonds. But of course, not until we have a good long-range strategic plan in place. Also, as we're taking a look at the finance side, really taking a look at, as we move forward, this past year our priorities were 27-1, not laying teachers off, and addressing salary compression with $4.9 million. And so that was our priority. So we move into the next year, our priority has to be really taking a look at compensating our staff across the board at a level that a district our size should compensate staff for. People shouldn't come into our district and make less than a district that they were at that served a smaller group of students or a smaller student population. And so that's a good step we took forward with yesterday with the memorandum of agreement between TUSD and the different bargaining units within the district that said, as new dollars, should the governors appealed to ask that the state not have to pay back the millions of dollars to, I think it's over $300 million to public education, that it cut district short in the past. Should that money come, we work together and we get a plan going. But if that money is late in arriving, really taking a look at some efficiencies that we can identify within the district so that we can provide compensation to our staff within our means. And so that commitment is already a conversation that we've begun. Should the board approve this plan, it formalizes us continuing that commitment to identify financial priorities in our people. That's the big financial priority as we move forward. The final aspect is communication. I feel like that guy that was doing the State of the Union rebuttal and kept drinking water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this guy say a few things. We're here at the TEP Conference Center because we began the conversation here by throwing the doors open and inviting people in. The plan is so important because it will align our people, our time, our money, our resources, all for a common purpose, which is to make a better district and so that we graduate students at a higher level.
We do need to identify one person in each of the groups that's going to be your official spokesperson. Who's going to represent you guys?
Our students, our parents, our families, they had so much more insight than sometimes what I thought I had and what I brought to the table because they know Tucson. This is their community and their district.
Think about alignment to the priorities. You can provide some suggestions on how to strengthen that priority because again, these are still in rough draft form.
So as you listen to each of our SMART goals, you'll see how the feeder patterns really play a distinct role.
How diversity impacts the school system and how it can get incorporated into our learning.
I'd have to say that that was the first major aha, was that participation increased as we went through the process, not decreased, and that showed that people were really interested.
We also want to prepare the readiness of our staff to respond to emergency situations, and so we wanted to do this by developing more training for our teachers and administrators.
To improve the communication, collaboration, and information across the district. And drive innovation and automation in those core business processes within the new ERP system.
You know that website Ask Jeeves, where you can go on and ask a question and you get an answer? That's what we envisioned, something like that, where you can type in a question. Tiffany said an incident came up in her school the other day that they had bees, and she needed to know who to call first to get rid of her bees. So we're going to increase parent trust and try to tackle some of the negative media and the negative perceptions that we have of TUSD in this community.
The reason this plan is important is it provides a magnetic north. We understand together, where we're going. And ultimately, it tells us day in and day out what we need to do so that this district is the best district for every student, for every TUSD team member, and for the community at large. Ultimately, we build a better Tucson Unified School District and a better Tucson community, one student, one graduate at a time.
I'm a strong believer that we can do it in a way that we can actually work as a team, understand that we might have some disagreements, which is okay. That's basically democracy.
I was just impressed with everybody involved and the fact that we were doing this. That was very important.
I think it's important to the community and very important to the district in the way that we receive information, the way that we use information, the decisions that we make, and the communication that we have back with the community and with our parents. I was excited to be a part of that, that process, to have a voice in helping the district.
I think it's creating some positive energy within the city about what TUSD is doing, and I'm really excited to be a part of that.
I want you to know that it's to make this district a great place. And for that, I am grateful, my team's grateful, and the students will benefit from your work. Thank you so much. So let me finish up this part of the presentation with communication, because it only makes sense that we end with how we would get the word out about all the work that's been done. Strategic priority 1 under communication is about communicating the major initiatives of the strategic plan. So in essence, it means all of our ambassadors, all of the people that took part in putting this together, we want to be sure that as we're rolling the work out, that we have forums, that we have occasions where we attend Rotary meetings, where we attend PTA meetings, PTO meetings, where we go to school performances, where we make ourselves available to talk about the plan and talk about what's going on. Also through our press releases as we begin moving these major initiatives out, that we're all communicating what's going on. And that's the best way to ensure. One of the reporters interviewed me before the session, and she asked a really good question. She said, what's going to hold accountability so this doesn't get shelved? It was something along those lines. And the answer is we have to get out and we have to communicate it. We have to get out and we have to communicate it. And so we have to get out and we have to talk about what's going on. And we have to get out and we have to show what's going on. And the people that were in the video that are here and those that couldn't make it, we have to continue to re-engage them and say, is this what you were thinking when we were putting this plan together? Give us your feedback and let's make the tweaks and adjustments. The second one is about internal communication. You know, I do my team member update. I email it out. It gets posted on the web. Ms. Foster sends it out through a listserv. And so we have to get better with our internal communication. And so I'm really looking forward to us leveraging some of our resources, such as Parent Link, sending out newsletters, getting the app going. But it's not about the app and it's not about the newsletter. It's about the content of what's in the newsletter and what's on the app. And so it should be rich with what we're doing in the district to better education, as well as all the opportunities with our standard campuses, with our magnet programs, with our AP programs, with our advanced learning, our dual language, our exceptional ed, everything that we offer for students. We should have that out there and we should communicate that, and that's part of this. But we have to start by communicating internally so that our people within the district know that these are options and that these things are available. Because they are the best messengers. When parents have a question, they go to the teacher and then they go to the administrator. So we need to be sure all of us are on the same page. 3 is about a unified TUSD brand. What is the brand? What do we stand for? And that will evolve out of the work from the strategic plan. And my goal is, and I believe our goal is, that the identity is a renewed district, a renaissance of sorts of TUSD, a rebirth. That this is that age, and we are here at this point in time and point in history, 147 years into the district, and by the 150th year, we see ourselves well on the way of renewing this district. Strategic priority 4 is about responsive communication. It's about the community's diverse information needs. So some of this speaks to multiple languages, but it also speaks to multiple avenues, such as social media. You know, today it's Facebook and Twitter, and ensuring that we get the word out through using social media. We have somebody tweeting the meeting, as a matter of fact, today, hashtag strategic plan, right? So, I don't even have a Twitter account, so I don't know what I'm talking about. He just told me to say it. So it's time to get one, right? So hashtag awesome was already taken, so anyway. But responsive communication doesn't just mean about diversity of language. It also talks about diversity of use. I know that my wife is she got a Facebook page and never had time for it. Now I can't get her off it. And so she knows what's going on before I do. And I'm like, where'd you hear that? She says, it's on Facebook. You didn't know it? Your people put it on the TUSD Facebook page. I'm liking it now. And so I didn't even know what that meant, but she explained it to me. So community engagement via information is also really taking a look at advocacy. So if we're getting the word out, if we're talking about what we're doing and we're heading in the right direction. And, I'm the first to say that I'm going to be very thoughtful and very, I guess the best way to capture this year in summation is I'm finishing up the presentation on this specific work, which has been a big part of what we've done this year. I hope that as I move forward in the district, I'm as lucky to remember the good decisions and repeat them. And I hope I'm wise enough to learn from my poor decisions and not repeat those. But I'll tell you, one of the wisest things that we did was opening the door and inviting people in and saying, here are the issues, here are the audits, here's what they say, here are the holes, here are the gaps. We're not going to take it personally, but we're going to work together to fix it. We're not going to cast stones or cast blame. We're going to address this together. We're not going to look at it hopelessly and say, well, TUSD's best days are in its past, but rather to re-energize ourselves and renew our belief that its best days are very near indeed. So at this point in time, I'd be happy to address any questions that the board may have, and then at the conclusion of that, I would like to ask for the board's approval for the plan. So I'd like to address any questions.
Okay, really quickly, los servicios de los intérpretes están disponibles. ¿Hay una persona que necesita? Okay, gracias. Okay, board members, do you have any questions? Mr. Juarez.
I'll start off with a comment and then I'll ask you a couple of quick questions.
Yes, sir.
So I'd argue that this strategic plan is unlike anything TUSD's ever seen. I think you mentioned 147 years. We're approaching that 150. And it's very common to shelve these kinds of plans. This plan is unique in the sense that it wasn't created by administration. It wasn't created by a single superintendent. It was created in collaboration with community members, staff, teachers, counselors, students, the board, and yourself. But more importantly, community. I mean, what we've come to know as the TUSD community.
Yes, sir.
So I mean, that in itself is important, because I think there's a lot of folks in this audience, staff included, that are going to hold our feet to the fire if we don't follow through on this 5-year plan. That being said, plans like this one are fluid. They are not written in stone. They are not the 10 Commandments.
Yes, sir.
They are, for all intents and purposes, a game plan that we're going to put forward. And forward being the key word. So I'm gonna get to my question here in a second.
Yes, sir.
We need to move forward. There's been a lot of kicking the ball down the field. There's been a lot of, oh, well, we're gonna get to that. I think having an infrastructure for what we're gonna do, I think is immensely important. The board, obviously, along with yourself, are going to be making those decisions about policy as we move forward.
Yes,
but
sir.
we do need a plan, and that's why one of the important questions that we had during bringing in superintendents, we were looking specifically at what are we looking at for the next 5 years. So I want to first and foremost thank the community members that took the time to participate at the school and be there every Saturday and be part of that process. I want to make sure that we honor and respect them by not delaying this process any further. I for one would like to move forward. We certainly have some questions, and I think that those are good questions that we're going to probably ask you.
Yes, sir.
But here's the question. How will this 5-year strategic plan help all students, and I mean all students, equitably, whether they're honor students or whether there are students in exceptional ed or in our dual language programs?
Yes, sir.
ELL students. How will this plan help these students? How will it support staff? So let's go with the students first, and then I'd like for you to tell us how it's going to support staff arrive at these goals that we're putting forward.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll go back to the very beginning, and so what the board will see, for example, under Curriculum Strategic Priority 1, the strategic priority in the past, whenever plans were created and then shelved, they stopped at the strategic priority level. They stopped there. It's a really deep statement, but what's it mean? And so as you can take a look at the screen and then at your handouts, you'll see there's a year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 goal. The year 1 goal says design an easily accessible and usable scope and sequence with an evaluation rubric for yearly analysis and improvement. As you move to year 2, it talks about design a curriculum that includes common interim and year assessments. 3, it talks about authentic assessment. 4, it talks about materials that are aligned. And then 5, it talks about the epitome, where we want to be: aligned, articulated, clearly communicated, well-administered curriculum, horizontally vertical aligned. And it's based on foundational standards, knowledge, and skills in all content areas. So what this does is it lays out annual goals. Now, when I get to the portion about the superintendent's evaluation, which comes after this, my evaluation will be tied directly to the operationalization of year 1 goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound in the type of artifacts that will be produced to show. So this isn't something that I can pat myself on the back and tell the team we did a good job, all right, now let's just go check email. What this says is, if the board approves this plan and then approves my goals, those goals that would be my goals are directly tied to the execution of this strategic plan. And these goals then become the goals of the superintendent's leadership team, and they become the goals of our central administrators and our campus administrators and our teachers, and we work together. Because as I mentioned, this can't be done by me. It has to be done by all of us. And so these become our goals. And so I was very sincere in saying, should the board approve this, I'll hold myself accountable to executing it, to the point that my own evaluation will be tied to the execution of this plan. And there's nothing else I can offer that would be any deeper in a professional capacity than my own evaluation as a superintendent of this district tied to the execution of this plan. So that's what ensures it moves forward. Now, in helping all students, what we're talking about is curriculum, and we're talking about diversity. And we're not just talking about, and you've been very good at this, Mr. Juarez, in your addresses, especially to students with special needs. You always bring up to Mr. Butler and myself and others, it's great that you had a Latino student, a Native American student, an Asian student, African American student, English student. It's great you had all those. But what about a student with that's in exceptional education or that has learning needs? And so this is an awareness where it says all, it means all. And when we talk about raising the standards for all kids, we're talking about raising the standards for all designations that the Department of Education looks at and that we should look at. English language learners, exceptional ed students, students with access needs such as 504 students, students with advanced learning needs that should be pushed, those kids who get it the first time and those kids who need 2 or 3 more times to get it. Because it's always about the destination. We shouldn't focus on so much on them not getting it the first time, but that we get them to a destination. So it's really built on helping all. The other piece in this is, we're talking about this from a holistic point of view. In the past, what's been done with plans is operations has a little plan over here, curriculum instruction has a plan over here, school leadership has a plan over here, and everybody's plan is different. HR has their plan over here, and they don't jibe, they don't fit together. So this is, to use the carpenter's phrase, this ensures that tongue and groove, everything fits. So that as we're talking about recruiting, as we're talking about kids seeing themselves in the curriculum, we need people who have those experiences. So HR knows we need to cast a wide net and bring diversity into our hiring process. And then we know that as we develop our curriculum teams that come in during the summer and revise and update curriculum, that we bring in those diverse people from diverse backgrounds that we brought into our district that mirror our kids to help enrich the curriculum and roll in their experiences into the materials we use, the text we teach. And so in that, you can see it all ties together. Then finance understands that as we're bringing people in from out of district, that we may have to do some work in some stipends to move people, or we might have to do some work when it comes to helping them relocate, or so they become aware of the expense in doing a broad recruiting outside of just Arizona, going, north, south, east, west, overseas, South America, Mexico, Latin America, so on and so forth. So everything ties together again. And then if we're talking about curricula being engaging, that goes to the facility side, and the technology plan works in. And then central to this is the training. And again, we want to ensure that we compensate people well. So you can see in just this explanation, to answer your question, a very simple, direct question, how everything has to tie together. And that hasn't been our strong suit in the past. We've done all these one-off things, and it's as if we're working hard, but all in our own direction. And you get to a point to where that tug pulls people back to the center, and they're tired, but they haven't done anything together with any level of purpose. And so this is to ensure the magnetic north, as I stated earlier, and that we're all moving in the same direction. We all understand our part in building a better TUSD.
You mentioned a little bit about, can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. You mentioned a little bit about the curriculum itself, and my second question was really more in relation to the curriculum audit that you opened your presentation with.
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure that in your response that you keep a couple things in mind. First and foremost, we're looking at the unitary status plan.
Yes, sir.
Secondly, I want to make sure that we're looking at the magnet plan, and that all inclusive of this boundary review that we're currently under. On my way here, I got a call from our phone system that asking me about the boundary review, which was interesting. Yeah. But my question actually is going to be, in terms of keeping us accountable, how is this plan going to continue to engage community in a way? Because you talked about what we haven't done well in the past, and one of the things that I feel strongly about is not engaging community effectively, all community. Right. Whether we're talking about the economic status or whatever the case is, I think it's about engaging all community where they're at. Much like we're going to engage students, meet them where they are. That's if you can
Sure.
respond to that.
Sure. We had subcommittees in finance, facilities, curriculum, instruction, diversity, and communication come together. And it's already been discussed among the team. They understand that on a quarterly basis, at minimum, not at maximum, but at minimum, we're going to bring people together. We're going to talk about the progress we have in the plan, let them know where we are, give them the opportunity to ask questions and re-engage them. And I mentioned some of that in the presentation, that we want them to be that check on us, that check and balance, that we're actually moving forward, and that the meetings are on the books and they're communicated ahead of time. So should the board approve this tonight, the meetings will be put on the books, the location will be put on the books. We'll invite people in, we'll ask for their feedback, we'll ask how we're doing, and it won't be a survey, it'll be us in person saying, how are we doing? And tell us what you think, and are we heading in the right direction, and let's make adjustments. And so again, it's a high level of accountability. The other piece, of course, would be reports to the board as we move this work forward. On the magnet side, when you're looking at curriculum, magnets have a theme. And part of the 5 pillars was about ensuring that there is a deep curriculum, that there's a really involved curriculum and good training that attracts students in. So the Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards are the foundation for our curriculum. And all of the year-at-a-glance documents and assessments are available. But what the magnets get the opportunity to do is take advantage of all of that background work that has been done for them, and now take that content and adjust it and make it fit their theme. Because regardless of the theme, they still are accountable, we're all accountable for the Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards until something else comes along or the state changes its mind. So we've done a lot of background work. We'll give them some exemplar units and let them take a look at it, and then they'll get to make the modifications that they feel are appropriate. But truly, I want us to get out on the circuit. And so every member of the superintendent's leadership team, we're going to set up speaking engagements across the district to where, Dr. Morado, Ms. Gallegos, Dr. Vega, myself, Mr. Watt, where we get out and we say, hey, we're going to be out. Come ask us questions. We want to talk to you about the plan. We want to tell you what we're doing. We want to show what we're doing year one. And, we have translators here. We can take translators with us, and as I've always said, se habla español, so I can do that as well. So, we're very well equipped to go out and do that, and all the people on the team, as part of their interview process, knew they would be working late, should the board approve this, and that they would be out presenting this, and that we would be very accessible. And so that's how we get the word out, and that's how we keep the momentum going with this.
I think, and I'll close with this, I think all the elements in the plan are very impressive, they're very inclusive, but one of the things I think when folks think of the term diversity, it automatically will think of race. I think when I think of diversity as it relates to this plan, is that there's something for everyone in this plan.
Yes, sir.
And I really appreciate the community pushing forward with that. Changing demographics is one important component, but the fact that we are going to meet everybody where they are, and we're going to make every effort to do that. Obviously, this board is going to hold this administration accountable, but I think this community is going to hold this board accountable.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And, the unitary status plan is a 3-year plan. This is a 5-year plan, so this continues to work forward. So as we work through the unitary status plan and move those items forward, and they're all embedded within this. You've all had an opportunity to read the entirety of the plan. You'll see family community centers. You'll see a lot of that engaged in here. The recruitment of diverse staffs integrated in here. And so this continues to work so that when the USP work is concluded, that we don't say, well, I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. No, it's in this plan. It moves forward. It continues to ensure that we don't fall back into a situation where we're trying to exist without a plan. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Hicks.
I'd just like to say thank you for you, Dr. Sanchez, and all the individuals who worked so hard to put this plan together. It is very impressive, and I'm very eager to support this. I do have just a couple comments. And
yes, sir.
Under the curriculum.
They want you to speak in there so it can pick.
You
The
still-
mics are real, they're not as super.
Okay. Usually my voice travels pretty good.
People that are listening online.
In regards to the, one thing that I didn't notice was a lot in regards to, was student support and family support involved in this. I don't know if I missed it, but our main objective here is to educate our students and make sure that they're doing what they can do, and make sure that we put our best foot forward in helping them in any way possible to get them through school and put the rigors together.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to see something in regards to that. And the only other thing, I piggyback off of Mr. Juarez's comments, I truly do, the feedback's getting me. It's one of the things under the communication side of this is one thing I'd like to see, as with a lot of our other classrooms, we have declarations in each of our classrooms that's up. And I'd like to have some type of this plan put on our classrooms, so not only the teachers, but the students and the families that come in there see that and have that put in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, we most definitely want to be sure that this is available and that this is advertised and that people have full access to see what we're about, so that they know what the main thing is and what the work is. And under the diversity plan, community engagement, as you take a look at the community engagement part of it, we're strengthened and increase its community engagement, families, business, nonprofit, higher ed, faith-based. There's some of what you described in there, but we also have within the plan we're looking at, and it ties in with the USP, the 4 community outreach centers. You know, we already have Southwest and really strengthening Southwest. We're looking at other locations, one on the west side. Well, we have the one on the west side. We're looking at one more central, and then one more north, and then one more east, to where we get out and we do some of the things that you mentioned, where we work with educating the parent on how better to support the education of their student. And, you know, I think we got a real wake-up call this past Friday when we did the Steps to Success, and we went out and we knocked on doors, and we found kids that were a 0.5 P credit and a 0.5 health credit away from graduating, and they just decided that they didn't want to come anymore. And the parent was standing there saying, "Can you help me, because I can't get her out of bed to go back to school." And so, I mean, this was a parent who was asking for help. He said, "I can't get her out of bed to go to school. She just needs a 0.5 here and a 0.5 here." And I know that. I've talked to the counselor, and I ended up being one of the presidents for the Pima College, one of the Pima College campuses, Dr. Morales, who said, "You know what? She's not here right now, but I'm going to call her." And she asked me for the number, and so she followed up with a phone call to this family and to this student. And so that's, again, you know, that whole community component. And it shouldn't have been just a one-time event. It was great that we did it, but what this plan should speak to is it shouldn't be a one-time event. It should be something that we repeat, and we're looking at repeating it in January. And that's part of the plan, ensuring that we don't forget, as I mentioned earlier, we don't forget the things that we were lucky enough to do right, that we continue those things. And so this is one of those that I think we're very fortunate to do right in collaboration with the mayor and many other people, and we just need to continue that. And so, yes, sir, I concur, and I do like the idea about us. The poster behind you, by the way, was done by Jess and the team, and so, I mean, we have the ability to do this in-house. So if y'all will recognize Jess for his... And it was like I asked him on a Monday, and he showed up with it on a Wednesday. I mean, he and the team are amazing. And then Mary Canty, who's over here behind the camera, she's the one that did the videos. And I said, "Can you do my good side?" And she was so sweet and said, "Oh, they're all good." And then I think she laughed. But anyway, she's very sweet. So she also did a good job with the video. So if we can acknowledge her at this point. So we have, the reason I pointed out our internal district personnel is, to your points, we have Jess, who communicates very well through the visual media. We have Mary, who communicates very well through video. And then we also have Michelle, who's our district writer over here, who will write a write-up of what's going on and get the press release out. And then we have Nicholas, who's our expert tweeter. So we call him Tweety. So if we can also recognize him, please. I think it'd be fair. And you know, these pictures speak all kinds of languages without having to say a word. So we also have that as an opportunity. So thank you, sir, for the comments, and we'll be sure that that is part of the work we do.
Okay, I just wanted to say, you know, thanks to everyone who worked on this. I know it was very hard and very diligent on your time to do this and taking you away from your family. I really do appreciate this, and I'm sure it will not get shelved,
no, sir,
as we discussed before. But again, you know, this is what we're here for right here, is for the development of our children.
Yes, sir.
So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Seligman.
I have one question and then several comments.
Yes, sir.
Based on our previous communication, I understand your request to be adopting the shorter document, the 10-page thing, which more or less corresponds to your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. That is very good. My first comment is that this is something that we really needed to do or need to do. When Dr. Sanchez came, one of the questions he asked us, and I remember this moment quite distinctly, was where was our 5-year plan? And it was sort of an embarrassing moment for us, I think. At least it was an embarrassing moment for me that we did not have one. The district has for a long time been in a reactive mode for sometimes understandable reasons, but this is something that we need to do to get into proactive mode. I think that's a big change in culture for us, and this is a very important first step toward that. So that was an excellent thing that you have started here. My second comment is that I agree with the spirit of many of the comments of the speakers that this is just a first step. Normally, I think a project like this to do it right in a district this complex, and especially doing it for the first time when we don't have a template, could be a 2-year process. And I view this, what we have here tonight, as a first step. In some sense, this is taking the ball to the 20-yard line, which is not to minimize it. So the first 20 yards, getting from the 0-yard line to the 20-yard line is sort of the hardest 20 yards in a lot of ways. So that's a very good first step. But there are things missing here. I think this is not integrated with the important work of the Boundary Committee, right? You know, this somehow Indian needs to be synthesized. Ms. Campoy correctly pointed out that this is not evidently and tightly integrated with the DSEG plan, which is a very important part of our environment. Ms. Fox, Mr. Martinez, I think, made correct points about other things that are missing. And I don't mean this as criticism at all. I'm just saying this is in the spirit of saying that this is taking us to the 20-yard line. I got a lot of emails this week, well, some emails this week, from people who actually spent the time to read the posted draft and send me detailed comments on it, which was pretty impressive and indicated they took it seriously. And they asked questions like, well, where are site councils here? Where are further reductions in class sizes? And I agree with those comments, but my interpretation is that that's part of the next 80 yards, right? That this is a first step, and then we will flesh it out and get to all those questions that we haven't been able to address here. So I mean that in a very positive way. And the last comment, which is partly repeating, following on the other board members' comments, is I really appreciate the effort and the time of all the people who participated. And not just that, but I think this was a very good way to start the project, and I give you credit for that, to start this project from the ground up and to go out to the community in an organized way and get a lot of people involved. And those now become 120 stakeholders who will be very disappointed if this does somehow not go anywhere, and will be at our backs to make it happen. And so I think that was a very good way to do the first 20 yards and creates a very good foundation for that. So I give you credit for that, and I give all the people who participated credit for that, and I hope they stay involved and keep pushing us from the back. And so those are my main comments. When I vote for this, I view it as a vote for the process, and I view it as a vote for a first step, a very first step, and not a final document, but I feel very positive about voting for the process and for this as a first step.
In 2003, I was so fortunate to be invited to Oxford University to present a research study. And I had the opportunity to stand behind a lectern that Winston Churchill had used when he gave the famous D-Day invasion speech. And I remember what was written was, this isn't the end. This isn't even the beginning of the end, but it is the end of the beginning. And I feel very much in the spirit of the words on that lectern that this is the end of the beginning, and that there's a lot of work to do. Proactive way from too many years in this district has been defined as aggressively reactive as opposed to truly proactive. And as you made your comments with Boundary, USP, and so on and so forth, as I've mentioned, those pieces are always within the fluidity of the work that we have before us. And so we acknowledge the efforts by those who have come in before us, and we identify how to take those to the next level. As I mentioned, this is a plan that involved as many community stakeholders as we could. And it will be a piece that we roll forward. And so I appreciate your comments that there was no template. This hasn't been done before in this district. This is the first time. And as my wife reminds me on a very frequent basis, I'm not perfect. And so, but this is my best effort. But fortunately for me, my best effort has been buttressed by the amazing effort of all of the people that are in this room and many others that couldn't make it here tonight. And within that, I feel very, very confident that their strengths will help address and compensate any weaknesses that I may have brought to the table as a first-year superintendent, setting upon this very bold endeavor. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Foster.
And again, I have to join my fellow board members in thanking everybody. I was fortunate to come on a couple Saturdays and to spend the first day here. I know some of us here spent the first day with everybody, and then to go on Saturdays and really participate and see the engagement. I think I was moved to tears that day. It was just so impressive. And I just want to reiterate that what you said earlier about the participation increasing over time and not decreasing. And I don't think I, as an educator, have ever experienced that. It's always been, you're still, hey, the 2 or 3 at the end that are hanging in. And so to think that more people joined in as this developed is such a statement to where we're going as a community. And so I want to just start with that. And I do have a question at the end. I do have an important question. But I want to reiterate that this is not really the how. I mean, we'll get to the how with the superintendent goals, right. But the how, we're going to disagree. Our board members will definitely disagree and will struggle to work through the how. But what's different and what's so important about this is that this is the goal. These are the goals that the community has asked of us, and not individuals then bringing their goals and bringing their agendas forward, but that we really commit to these are the goals where we're moving together. And we will disagree on the how. I am sure that will happen. And we have tough decisions. I mean, I know there's some curriculum concerns that some of my fellow board members have, and under finance and facilities, I know we'll be facing some difficult decisions. And going back to this is just the beginning. These are high goals, and it will be difficult, but I know we are committed to doing that together. And as an educator, my question, because I did have a red flag went up during your presentation about things being taught differently across the district, how things are being taught differently all over the district. And I just want to caution us to be thinking about how are we building our professional capacity of our staff, and by telling how you do it, right, really doesn't build that capacity. And so my red flag went up when you said that you were concerned about things being taught differently across the district. And when we think about our themes at our magnets, they should be taught differently. And so we have to balance our professional ownership of our teachers' instruction with the consistency of that instruction. And so if you could just talk a little bit about that, because I, as a teacher, really relish in how I teach, and I will defend that. And I want that to be developed in our staff and not taken.
No. And this is a conversation that after Mr. Holmes, Dr. Vega, and myself were looking at the findings of the curriculum audit, it's all about balance. It's all about balance. And so when I talk about different, what I really want to ensure is, and Mr. Waters brought this point earlier, that I don't have a different set of expectations for our exceptional ed learners than I do for students who don't have exceptional education needs. That I don't have a different level of expectations for English fluency, proficiency in written and spoken language for an English language learner than I do from a native English speaker. I want to be sure that we get all students to that higher level. So when I talk about different, I want to ensure that at minimum, we're preparing students to be ready for the next grade and then ultimately college or career. So when I'm talking about differences, I want to ensure that for students, that the expectations that we have for them are high and achievable. And the way we do that in a lot of circumstance comes down to somebody who has been put in a novel situation and has never worked with an exceptional ed student who, for example, may have maybe a student with autism. And so a teacher who has never worked with a student with autism might struggle, and then the expectations become different than a teacher who's had some training and professional development to understand how to work with a student with autism or support. And so a student with autism can achieve and should achieve at the same level as a student without when it comes to certain academic pieces that aren't an aspect of any cognitive disability. And so it's really about ensuring that through the diversity of all of our students, we don't change expectations because of economic, ethnic, or life circumstances such described. So I really want to speak to that. Now, the strength of what we're proposing with the plan, because we had educators, we had teachers, we had Francis with TA at the table, is I never want to get to the point to where we're going back to the days of reading first, where teachers were given a script and they had to open their box, they had to open their little kit, pasaporte, and pull it out and read the script and follow the script and give out the worksheet and grade the worksheet. That's not what we want. That's not even close to what we want. So what we're proposing is a scope and sequence. It says here are all the standards, and here are the supporting standards that align with Arizona College and Career Readiness. And here are the themes in English. Here are some recommended texts. And these recommendations are coming from teachers. So teachers are coming to the table and working with the curriculum department to put this together. And so as it's rolled out, it's by teachers, for teachers, of teachers. It's not by a textbook company or by a vendor, that's to be imposed on folks. That's not what we want. And as we do tweaks and adjustments, it'll be based on the data. We'll see what kids got, what they didn't get, and we'll bring teachers in to help inform the adjustments and changes. But what I don't want to get into the business in, and remember what Dr. Poston said, the things we hold tightly are the standards that should be taught at each grade level to ensure that we don't get into a social promotion situation. But the things that should be held loosely are practice, the delivery, the art of teaching, that's pedagogy, the art of teaching. So we don't want to get to the point where we say, you have to use these 5 strategies, and you use these 5 strategies, we're going to knock you on your evaluation. We don't ever want to get to that point, because teaching is an art form and there's creativity, but a sculptor, if a sculptor is going to sculpt out of granite, there are certain tools the sculptor has to use. The sculptor can't use the same tools for granite that he would use for clay. And so what we want to do is provide the tools so that as people take the true art of teaching and the passion for teaching and move it out with our students, that they still have that. And what we do is we provide teachers the opportunity to share with each other how they work with students from different backgrounds with different needs to get them all to that high level. So that's the balance of our curriculum. And this first year is all about really building the standards and rolling the standards out, and a few exemplar units, not to be faithfully implemented with fidelity, but to be used as a gauge and a rubric, to be used to, do we have these elements in? And if we do, great. Most great teachers already incorporate those elements. And so the work in curriculum and professional development isn't to create uniformity or robots. It's really synchronicity in the sense of the standards, but not a foolish consistency. Yes, ma'am.
What is the plan to continue to utilize the expertise of the different members of these groups and in continuing to sort of keep TUSD accountable to all of these goals and strategic plans, but again, to try to be part of that group that will help try to make modifications where we need to?
Sure. The first piece is just some very standard communication that should the board approve this plan tonight, we're going to sit down and we're going to put on the calendar the dates in which we bring people back for the first quarter review so that we can give them a status update on where we are first quarter. But a status update isn't just about here's where we are, all right, thank you, great, have a nice afternoon. The status report is about here's where we are, and then asking for feedback, suggestions, and advice on how this plan evolves. And so the first thing we're going to do is sit down and set those dates, and we have all the names and emails, and we'll begin communicating out and inviting people back. Another piece of this, and this would fall with our communications department, will be some very regular reports that we would put together. So first month, here's our progress report, here are the things we've done, and so we would begin communicating out very regularly to all these stakeholders and to the board. Here's our progress report in each of the areas. So for example, Ms. Soto over finance would say, here's where we are, moving the ERP out and training people and really mapping our processes, here's where we are. Mr. Holmes in curriculum would say, here's where we are, here's some example maps, check this link out, read them, give us your feedback. Mr. Butler would take a look at diversity. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're engaging people. Ms. Maiden would begin taking a look at here are the campuses we've identified that their level of diversity isn't strong, and here are some first renditions of a draft plan to cast a wider net. So It's really through setting those meetings so people put them down, sending out the reminders, and then sending out monthly updates or status reports of where we are and where we're going. And of course, accountability to the board here. But really and truly, it's we want you to come back in. And I think as people have seen the work that they put in, these are their statements. I mean, you know, these are their statements that they put together. And other than a little proofreading we had to do to correct some of our typos in interpretation, these are their statements. These are their goals. And so, you know, we want to be sure that we execute those and they know them as well as we know them. And so to ensure the fidelity of executing them as they envisioned them, we need them to come back to the table. And I think as they see that what they said, by and large, the majority of it is here, should send a clear signal of they took you seriously. They listened to you. They put it down. They asked for the board to vote for it as direction. And I think as we begin bringing them in and they begin giving us advice and we make adjustments and they see that we've made adjustments based on their advice, that they'll buy in, because people don't like lip service. They like to know that they've been heard and that their voices and their recommendations, if not all of them, are being acted upon. The consideration is shown and that a good degree of them are acted upon. And so, as I mentioned, you know, there'll be a point in time, I hope, where I'll feel like a Tucson, and I still refer to myself as a Texan, but you know, where I feel as where I identify as I think I'll always be a Texan. Sorry, when you say y'all, you don't ever lose it. It's a good thing, and we're fixing to do stuff, y'all. Yeah. So, but I have to acknowledge that a year in, an expert does not make. And I think that it'll be a long time before I can consider myself knowledgeable enough to be able to say, no, let me tell you what that really means, because I have local knowledge. I don't think I'll ever be at that point, but I can sure tell you about the oil field. So with that, it's very wise of me to proceed with humility and open ears and to hear what the will of the people who understand the local landscape really is and act upon it. It's Tucson's district, not mine. I'm a servant.
And I think that as a native Tucsonan, I can't say that either, because I think that every community brings their own desires and wants for their children, and every school that I have visited in this district is unique in what they want. And so I'm inspired by the fact that this plan allows for that individuality, yes, but still holds on to some constants that need to be district-wide. Yes, and I'm inspired by that. The other thing that I'm excited about is the fact that you made mention of the Steps to Success plan, and the fact that many of the programs that we've initiated in the recent past are things that individual schools can roll out on their own. Yes. And so that is a district-wide program that we did once. But I can already hear teachers and principals and community members talking about, so why can't we go out to our own neighborhoods and get back those students that we lost? I'm like, you can. And that's the kind of, I think, support and inspiration that we really need in this district to really revitalize us. And so I'm very encouraged by this first step, and know that it is not something that is written in concrete, that it is something that we will continue to be able to modify. And so year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 goals, those are really great goals. Yes. But if year 2, something happens fairly dramatically one way or the other in any of these areas, it's flexible enough that we can go in to look that over and make the modifications that we need. So given that, and I'm given that every board member's had an opportunity to speak, I'd like to move the item.
And I would love to second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. I'll go ahead and ask for Dr. Stegeman.
I have just a couple quick extra comments. First, responding to the discussion about the fact that we'll have disagreements. I mean, of course, we do have disagreements, and we go along, and we're an elected board, and disagreements happen. We know that will happen. But I think we should always go in with the presumption and hope that we will do our best to reach consensus on things. And I think that has been a historical part of the board culture that we've a little bit gotten away from. I think that let's talk about trying to reach consensus instead of talking about a presumption of disagreement. Although we know, of course, when disagreements happen, they will happen. But to not make that assumption in advance. And secondly, I wanted to balance something I said. I was pointing out the various things that weren't in there that I think some people would like to see in there, but there are also a number of things in here that I think are positive contributions to the past thinking. And for example, and you mentioned it already, the teaching of Mandarin. So, and you already know how I feel about that. Mandarin over the next 50 years will become a world language. And I think that the U.S. generally is a little bit behind the curve, and that is something where we can get out in front of people and do something that's very positive for our students and very positive for the district. And that's an idea that's very clear in here, and I don't think has been part of the previous conversation. Right. And I think there are other things in here that are new and positive. So I appreciate that.
We have a motion and a second. Can I ask for a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Juarez?
There's a time for talking, there's a time for action, yes.
Dr. Stegeman?
Yes.
Ms. Grijalva?
Yes. Congratulations. Thank you very much, and good job, everybody. Yay, good work, everybody. If it's okay with the rest of the board, and just in case anyone wants to leave, I can't imagine why. It's only 8. It's not even 8 o'clock yet. We're going to take a really quick 10-minute break.
And we have refreshments.
And refreshments
so
are available.
I'm going for the red velvet cookies.
Okay. See you there. Okay. Thank you all for allowing us to have a quick break. If I can ask the board members and the community members that wish to stay for the next part of the meeting to have a seat. We're going to go ahead and get started here. It's not that. It's that when you said one more time, I'm like,
No, the only thing I wanted to respond to him was he alluded that I was saying that wasn't alluded, and that's not what I was saying. So I wanted to correct him. But then as I was reading him, he was going to go with the yes vote, so I was like, there's no point to fight.
I know, that's why I was like,
Well, I also wanted to highlight something in the plan that
still on. Yeah, no. And I think that we still have some time.
I'm getting strategic about that. Entré peleonero, but then...
Well, yo también. Turn them off.
If we can...
All right, let's go ahead and get started. We have to wait for superintendent who's being interviewed. For what? HT's being interviewed. Okay. Thank you all for allowing us to take a break. Item number 2 on action items are the superintendent's goals for 2014-15. Dr. Sanchez.
All right. So as I mentioned in the presentation, and it was a great question asked by multiple board members, how will I ensure that this doesn't sit on a shelf? And so the ultimate level of accountability is when you put yourself out there. So in a national frenzy where accountability is the name of the game and people put it on their campaign posters, I really want it to mean something. So in this sense, when I use the word accountability, my superintendent's evaluation should be tied to this work and should be tied to this strategic plan. So as you take a look at the copy of goals that I prepared in the tradition of superintendents past, where superintendents have presented goals, I know in many situations they've presented the goals in executive session, the board then comes out and votes on them. You know, in the spirit of true transparency, as you see the goals, my superintendent's goals are directly tied to each of the 5 areas, each of the 5 strategic priorities, and each of the year 1 goals. For example, curriculum says a scope and sequence for all core content areas that is vertically and horizontally aligned to standards, knowledge and skills that are easily accessible, usable, and we're talking about electronic, fluid, and secure. Also an evaluation process rubric for yearly analysis of improvement to ensure that the curriculum is evolving and that it's not static or it doesn't get stale. So you can see some of the measurable pieces, the attainable pieces, and then some of the possible evidence. And so what I've done here is I've tied my goals directly to the strategic plan in all areas. So I know the board's had an opportunity to take a look at all of these. And so my request is for the board to hold me accountable for executing the strategic plan year 1 goals. But with that request, you know, kind of to speak to Dr. Stegman and Ms. Foster's point, unfortunately, the board doesn't function like my household where I just do what my wife says and everything's great. In this situation, there is that conversation and it's dynamic. And so I'm going to need the board support in moving these goals forward because I'm going to bring things to the board for review, for advice, and for approval that are within this plan. There are some big items that I'm going to have to bring forward. And so for my goals, I'm going to need the board support in them too. So it's a real bold statement because there's those things that I can have influence over. We really don't. We fool ourselves if we think we have control over anything, but we do have influence over things. And so working with my team, I feel real confident in my team. I have a good team of people. And I appreciate the board support in helping me build this good team of people that we can move this forward. So what I'd like to recommend to the board, I'd like to recommend that the board approve the superintendent goals for 2014-15 as they are directly tied to the strategic plan, and they are the year one goals, and the SMART aspect has a heavy influence from the community's hand.
Board members? Dr. Stegman.
So we just, when did we get these? This is the first time I've looked at it. Maybe I missed. When did we receive these?
Dr. Sanchez.
Sure. These have been as I sent you my superintendent's weekly report, when I sent you out this document, which is the entire document, I asked the board to approve the statements. But what I didn't ask, and it was, were the whole detailed components, because that's, as various board members point out, that's the fluid part. That's the shift and move and funding and people and circumstance and so on and so forth. But the high level, the end, you know. So what I shared with the board when I sent you out this document, and it not only had the year one goals that are the superintendent that I've put in. I mean, I just basically took them and put them here. It has year 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, of course, we know as things roll forward, if I don't accomplish a goal in year 1, I'll come back and roll that into year 2. So that's how this thing shifts and moves. But by and large, the board has had access for about a month to the entirety of all of the goals. And so they're the same goals that you had in this document.
Ms. Foster.
Well, maybe Dr. Sanchez, because we definitely did have an opportunity to look at these, but could you just go through, you read the first one for the year goal 1 for curriculum. Maybe if we just read the year 1 goal for each of the, so the community and board members who didn't have a chance could see how they are directly tied to the plan that we just spent 2 hours going over?
Yes, ma'am. I'm fully prepared to do a high-level review of them, or as deep a level as is necessary. So I covered 1. So let's look at curriculum. Strategic priority 2, goal 1, year 1 is about delivering a culturally responsive curriculum that engages students. As you can see, teachers will deliver a culturally responsive curriculum through instruction that is rigorous and meets the needs of every learner by engaging students in learning, communicating, and feedback to students. And you can see the measurable piece by May of 2015. So we're looking at 95% of teachers who have been in the district 3 or more years will be proficient as measured through the district evaluation system. So this one is really speaking about our teacher evaluation piece, and it's really helping them be proficient. So anybody that's been in the district more than 3 years, I think it's fair to encourage them with support and with training. Year 1, 2, and 3 teachers, it doesn't make sense, because in the medical profession, you don't take a doctor who's just finished residency and say, all right, it's time for triple bypass, and we're going to hold you to the same standard. There are certain procedures that they allow them into, and so we're really looking at third-year staff. So this one does have that measurable component, and so this one is about delivering that culturally responsive curriculum, and that's been a question that's been asked throughout this past year. Have we trained teachers on how to be responsive to students who come from different cultures and different backgrounds? And so we've developed the training this past year. So it's now an opportunity to roll it out. And so, Dr. Mero and then Ms. Bailey Jones and have put a lot of work in, Ms. Begay James, and quite a few. And we also had, so now, under Mr. Butler's charge, working in concert with Richard Foster, it's my job to make sure the barriers are removed and that things are taken care of so that this training can roll out. So that's 2. 3 is talking about collaborative focused professional development. You can see in goal year 1, the specific pieces provide purposeful, centralized professional development to designate support personnel based on curriculum instruction with decentralized execution at the site level. So that goal is all about a TOT, which is trainers. So we're going to bring people in, we're going to show them the curriculum, we're going to talk about it We're going to take their ideas and we're going to take their thoughts. We've had a real good partnership with TEA on those early release Wednesdays. People are going to go out, they're going to share that, they're going to work on it, with their sites, break out into teams, really execute the intent and spirit of POCs where it's people sharing together. If you take a look at data, it says 100% of the school sites will collect and analyze ELA and math data. So if we're rolling out the curriculum, we need to collect it and analyze it. Some sites have been really good at that, but it's been random. So now at this point, we're going to say, all right, we need to see the evidence. The board saw version 1 of the data dashboard. We're working with ADE on the data dashboard, so that speaks to that. 5 is assessment.
Could I interrupt you for a quick second?
Sure.
So we can see how it's measured, because back with professional development, then it's measured by having bi-weekly professional development sessions. So then we could definitely measure our, did that happen? Like the 95% under instruction for the teachers over 3 years or more, and then did bi-weekly professional development occur? I just wanted to ask, I interrupted again, I apologize, to really help us see how we'll be measuring these goals.
Yeah, no, and every one of these pieces has a measurable piece, and that was the genius of using SMART goals, because they, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So the time is this year, by the end of this year, and then the measurable aspects you see throughout of the things that I'll bring forward. And for example, if the board says, all right, based on the sign-in sheets, did we get the TOT model moving? Or what if one of the people weren't available? Did y'all have a backup person go out and provide that training, or did the principal sub him? So my whole intent of this is, last year I brought you forward a very voluminous document with all the items we worked through. So this is an opportunity to tie not just specifically to what we'll do, but to have the measurable components in it, so that as I come back to the board, I can say, here was the metric, and here's how we did, and I can report back on that metric. So that's part of the measurable piece. You look at, year 1, goal 1 under data, you see 100% all sites, and then it says assessments, state assessments, interim assessments, Dibble, Sanford 10, Azalea, district level data collection reporting. So, we're really saying, we're going to look at all of this stuff. And so the due diligence will be under, Mr. Gallegos and Dr. Morado is, okay, are we doing it? Are we looking at it? And then what occurs in the ILAs will be the training component, so that they can do this with confidence. And we spent a lot of time on it last year, and we want to continue. We don't want to lose it, so it's part of that. When you take a look at the next one, which is about common quarterly assessments, you can see implement a standardized measurement system that is aligned, articulated clearly. You can see all of the components there, and you see teachers will administer a quarterly interim assessment focused on identified quarterly skills, concepts in the district's curriculum, guide, scope, and sequence. These assessments, the board has, took my recommendation for Dr. Freitas to do some of this work in collaboration with Dr. Clash, in collaboration with Mr. Foster and with school leadership. So this ties that all together, so that the rubber hits the road, and we didn't just hire people to hang around, that the plan's approved. Dr. Freitas and Dr. Clash now have their charge, which is, let's get with people, let's create that curriculum, and let's make sure these assessments are quality, and let's get teachers' feedback and clean them up before we roll them out. Let's not take it personally when the data comes back and people say that wasn't a good test. Let's fix it and make a better test the next time around, and that's how we move forward. So the entire plan, I don't know if the board wants me to go through every one of these, but the entire plan is built like this. The entire plan has the specific piece and the measurable piece. And so, again, I just really am asking, the craziest thing on earth is for the board to hold me accountable for 5 times 5, which is 25, in a lot of detail. 5 strategic priorities, and then 5 annual goals in 5 areas. So this is going to be a lot of work. So just for one item, 5 strategic priorities and 5 goals. So when you're taking a look at that, and then we have 5 areas.
It's very ambitious.
It's very ambitious, but Dr. Stegman and I had this conversation, and I never presume anything. I never presume anything. I have a 3-year contract. I finished 1 year. I have 2 more years. I don't presume anything. And it is ambitious because I have a guaranteed 2 more years to get work done. And I don't presume anything. And it is ambitious because I know how much time I have, and I want to do the most that I can with that time. And that's why it is as ambitious as it is. But I balance that with Socrates, woe to he who teaches men faster than they can learn. And so I will balance how we roll this out. And I don't mind taking hits on my evaluation if I have to scale things back, because I am being responsive to the people that have to execute this plan. And if I see my superintendent's leadership team starting to pass out and faint and miss lunch and breakfast, then we'll slow it down. But it is ambitious, and it's ambitious with intent.
Mr. Juarez, then Mr. Hicks.
There's that old adage that, you plan your work and you work your plan.
Yes.
And this is clearly very detailed. There's also the other idea that good leaders inspire and great leaders inspire other leaders to lead. And over the last year that I've seen the staff working, these staff are basically, for all intents and purposes, and I hate to use a military analogy, but they're your lieutenants. And they're going out there, from all different experiences and backgrounds, and they understand your vision, as do we, and I appreciate the level of detail and definitely the ambition. But as you've said it before, you're not doing this by yourself. You're doing this with an incredible team, and not only your leadership team, but also every one of the site leaders. Mr. Matt Munger in the back over there is nodding in sequence, and there's a whole lot of incredible leaders in this room, whether they work for the district or not, whether they're volunteers. And so I'm not going to blindly say, oh yeah, sign off. Outside, one of the reporters asked me, what did you mean by there's a time to talk and there's a time for action? Well, the way I described it was that the 5-year goal, the strategic plan, was really the macro, and this is really the micro that you're talking about.
Level.
And I'm fairly confident that this can be done, because the team is working very hard and very diligently. But I do appreciate the fact that you acknowledge that if they start passing out, and I do see them sometimes passing out during board meetings.
They just say I need to shut up because I'm boring. So.
But I do want to say, when people ask me how's it going over at TUSD, I say folks are working really hard, and I know that. But and I always tell everybody, make sure you take advantage of the vacation time when you can.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to be very supportive of this, because I think it can be done.
Thank you, sir. I do too, and you are absolutely correct that we have outstanding people and outstanding principals in this district, outstanding teachers in this district, and in every walk of what we do in TUSD, we have good people. And we can do this together as long as we stay focused on this. And, I was telling the team, to your point, before we met at McCorkle and we visited with the new teachers, and I told them to envision the plan as a bat, and all of the fads and latest, greatest, and wouldn't it be wonderful if we tried, that this thing has to be that bat. And it needs to be like when I was in Pee Wee League and you had that big fat bat, that it knocks the ball right back out. Mm-hmm. And that we stay focused on the main thing, so that we're not chasing fads or chasing the latest, greatest. That we stay focused on the key work, and if we do that, we'll be successful. It's only when we become distracted that we begin to fail, and this becomes impossible. So I really look at this as that fat bat that I had as a 3-year-old out there, as I was hitting the balls, thinking that I was Babe Ruth. So I'm really looking at it. It has to keep the main thing the main thing.
I mentioned, and I think all of us did to an extent, how fluid the strategic plan is. This is not as fluid. Certainly there's going to be changes and modifications, but really this is kind of what we're going to, the plan, if you will. So I do have one request.
Yes, sir.
Can I get this laminated, as I seem to be spilling water on my documents up here?
We're going to publish it real pretty now.
Well, I'm going to be carrying this around with me, because I definitely want to be keeping track of what we're doing, and that's all I got to say.
Yes, sir. No, we're going to publish it after we were waiting for board approval. Again, I'm not presumptuous. So when I was asked, did we need real nice, slick copies with fancy binding, I told them I don't presume anything. And so I'd rather the board vote happen before we go off and start hitting the printing press with this thing. So we'll get some real nice copies out for the board and out for the community, and definitely out on the sites and up on the web.
Assuming we pass this vote, again, I insist it be laminated.
It will be, sir. It will be, sir.
Mr. Hicks.
Presuming that this does go through, I do have one request that
yes, sir.
We we get updates like every 3 months or something, or every
Yes, sir.
2 months, every other month as to where we are with this. I don't like the idea of going through the entire year and then coming back and finding out. It'd be nice to set aside half an hour of one of our meetings to just go over what's been done, where we are, where you're at within this, where your staff is.
Yes, sir. My plan would be to work with the board office and set, curriculum instruction for August, and then September, diversity, and do one a month. And so that way you get an in-depth review, and then after we've covered all 5, then to begin covering some of the specifics of where we are in all of the areas. So as we get to the time to judge the work that's been done, and for the superintendent's evaluation to be gone through, y'all will have a very comprehensive view, and it's just asking some final closing questions and looking at the data in the end. That's a great recommendation, and we will definitely pursue that.
Okay, yeah, I just think it'd be better if we sat and did it instead of reading it in our reports that you send.
I agree.
Things get lost within that, and there's no conversation back and forth, and here we can have that conversation.
Yes, sir. No, I agree. I think that's a great idea, and a forum where we get to have this level of dialogue and get this level of clarity is really advantageous, not just for the board, but I think for us as well and the team, because we get to hear what your thoughts are, and we're able to act upon that a lot better. And sometimes they'll lose things that I'll get from y'all when I go back to them. So this will ensure that there are a lot of ears listening.
Okay. Any other? Dr. Stegeman.
Superintendent evaluation is one of the most important tasks of the board, central task of the board. We just got this, we've had the strategic plan quite a while to look at, which I appreciate. I should have said that before. But a strategic plan and evaluation rubric are not the same thing. And so I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not comfortable voting for this tonight. And I do see a couple specific problems. I think for purposes of evaluation, this is too complex. I think there are too many different things in it. I think this will put us in a difficult position practically in a year, and it'll be hard to execute this. It's much more complex than the goal structures we set up for Dr. Petticone. And the second reason, just looking at this quickly, is that one of the important innovations we made under Dr. Petticone was we made measurable student achievement a big part of the superintendent evaluation. And I don't, just in my quick run through, I don't see that in here. And I think that should, year after year after year, be a very important part. That's the business we're in, of how we do evaluation. And I'm would not be happy to see a retreat from that step forward, I thought. And so on those grounds, I won't be able to support this tonight.
Okay. Dr. Sanchez, did you want to address it?
No, ma'am. I have it as presented, and this is the work, and it's comprehensive. And my aspirations will be that this, as it moves forward, it will increase student achievement, and my hope is it'll increase student enrollment. And I'm very comfortable with it. It's a lot and it's complex, but I believe that with Mr. Hicks' recommendation that I'm communicating on this very frequently and bringing those metrics forward and showing what we're doing, that there will be that level of success. And I'm not afraid of accountability, and this is a high level of accountability. And so I'd just like to recommend that we move forward so that way the team gets its charge and we get to work.
Okay. Board members, any other comments? I have a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Can I ask for a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Juarez?
Yes.
Dr. Stegeman?
No.
Ms. Grijalva?
Yes. Okay. With that, I think TUSD has its charge on how we're going to continue to move forward. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Dr. Sanchez, for your presentation. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you to TEP for letting us use this.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Thank you, TEP, for letting us use your space. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so why the hell are we going to evaluate on that?